Recorder's on. I think the stream's already been on. So welcome back to episode 2 of A Game of Holes. This episode's going to be a little bit shorter than the last one. I got some feedback that we tried to cover a little too much ground in the last one, so we're going to try not to have quite so much going on to try to keep it a little shorter, but hopefully not that won't detract from what we got to talk about. So without further ado, I'll just flip on to what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to talk a bit about what's happened the past 2 weeks. I'm going to test out and feel out the waters with every 2-week schedule. So I'm going to try to have one of these rolling out every 2 weeks, which means that whatever happens between now and the next 2 weeks can be featured on the next podcast. Continuing our tradition from the last episode, we're going to bring some corporations on to come talk about themselves, talk about their corp, and just introduce some more people that are living out there in the unknown space. So for tonight's episode, we have people from Einstein-Rosen Brigade as well as Stranger Danger that are going to come tell you about themselves and their corporations. And then following up with that, I've got Of Sound Mind and the Glory Holers that'll be coming to talk about moving wormholes. Both of them have moved out of a C4, and they're going to come talk to us about where they moved to and what they hope that's going to mean for their corporation. So, it's been a busy couple weeks. Definitely a lot that's gone on. But a couple key highlights that I want to just discuss that I think it'd be amiss not to discuss is we had 2 fairly large scale operations take place over the last 2 weeks. One of which was the eviction of wow, dang it, I have the wrong name here. WormBEARS. Absence of Light were evicted by Shekel Squad. And so that's a big thing. Absence of Light has not been terribly active for the past while, and I'm sure there's potentially some ulterior motives here, a bit of a grudge match between some members. But the basic clip that I got from talking with some of the Shekel Squad, that it was quite literally also just we had an inactive group and they had a lot of loot, and while they're so far not telling us how much money they got, it is believed to be fairly high. Disappointingly so, we saw very little resistance from WormBEARS. If you go onto the kill board and you want to dig up and kind of look at that, just like you see with a lot of evictions, we had just stream of people self-destructing, some smack talk, but possibly one of the most one-sided evictions we've seen in quite a while. In this case, the defenders put up absolutely no resistance, and so as a result, they lost everything. Another slightly larger with a lot more groups involved, we saw Inner Hell evicting Bombers Bar out of one of their C2 static 6 static nullsec systems that Bombers Bar used as a staging ground. There's a lot of stories going around. One of the ex-Bombers Bar FCs wrote an after-action report posted to Reddit that you can go and find. But the gist that he put out, which is not significantly refuted by Bombers Bar, is that he decided that he had it out for them. You had some personal issues amongst the leadership, and he left for some of those reasons and decided to go back and go get them. Whether or not Inner Hell was paid or just went in for the loot is a little bit back and forth on some of the parties involved, and when I asked for what they wanted to share, I got no comment out of Inner Hell, but the end result is there are several dead citadels and a lot of loot that was scooped up and packed up. A significant amount of, supposedly well over 1,000 stealth bombers were scooped and looted out of that, along with countless covert op ships. Bombers Bar insists that it's no big deal and they're going to keep on carrying on, having just lost a staging system, but judging from the amount of salt and rage comments in the Reddit thread, there's definitely a lot of upset people about what they lost from that. So, those are the two big things that have happened. Those are the big events. Not terribly surprising, Wormhole space saw an uptick in the amount of larger scale fights over the past 2 weeks over the summer. Summer and Eve is generally a bit slower than some of the colder fall and winter months are. But the past 2 weeks saw over 30 large scale combat taking place. I'm using that loosely to mean there were at least 10 people on each side. I'm sure there was even more smaller gang fights going on in several, but that's what I was able to scrape up from peeking around the kill board. I don't have a new data extract to play with, but the next episode should include all of September's data, and I'll be doing a very deep dive. And then after that episode, I'm going to try to keep that on a monthly schedule. I just need to catch up from that. But rolling into a couple people talking that isn't just me. Emmeline, do you want to go first, talking about your corporation? Joining us tonight, we have Einstein-Rosen Brigade and Lee Blackwood from Stranger Danger, but I'm going to let Einstein talk first. So without further ado, Emmeline.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm Emmeline Farah, and I'm the CEO of Einstein-Rosen Brigade. We are a C4 Wormhole Alliance. We've been together for just a hair over 2 years, and we like to specialize in helping new bros and new to wormhole bros get used to wormhole life. We've helped people who have done absolutely nothing except high-sec mission running come live in a wormhole successfully, slowly build up their skills, and become happy, freaky wormhole dwellers.
All right. How long has your corporation been in wormhole space?
We have been, we started off with just the main corp, which is Interstellar Expeditionary Group. And that's been almost 3 years now, honestly. We started off in a C1. We literally lost the C1, as in couldn't find it anymore. But by that time, we'd sort of half moved into a C2. And we were in our C2 that had a low sec and C2 static for maybe a year and a half, before we reached that phase of the low class group where your members start skilling out of C2 life and they're getting bored and you're losing really talented people. So we made a decision to go ahead and move into a C4 and send out scouts. Had a very interesting encounter, but essentially purchased for a very reasonable price the C4 that we currently live in, and we've been there for gosh, it was a year in June, I think. So about a year and 2.5 months we've been in our C4. We've built up a nice little city there. We have really great fights. Last night, it was very exciting. As an alliance, we killed our first dreadnought. We killed a Shekel Squad Moros. Everyone's very excited about that. That was our first big kill together as a team.
Oh, snap, with the Shekel Squad call. Let's see how many people from Shekel Squad are watching on Twitch. Apparently not that many. Well, that's great. I wish I could remember when my corporation killed our first capital. It was definitely a while ago, but I have a feeling that it wasn't as monumental because it was probably someone being really stupid and not some sort of awesome fight. Was it a big fight that you managed to kill the Moros in?
Voro, how many people were there?
Hard to tell. We had 18 in fleet, but I think we had somewhere around 10 to 15 on field.
And it was all I think we had a few Nudine Armageddons, we had a Balgorn, but I mean, it was mostly sub-battleship sized ships that went after it.
I linked the kill board link down in the chat.
Had
a lot of fun.
Originally
it was a blast.
Yeah, one of our folks had spotted down the chain, and we think it was one of their ratting holes, a nag and the Moros ratting. And so we pinged everybody and said, "Hey, Capital's ratting, come kill." Almost had the nag, but the nag got away. But we got enough people together to pop some bubbles, and we burned down the Moros. And as I hear it, I wasn't involved, but as I heard it on comms, Shackle Squad, good fights all around, totally awesome about the whole thing, because we're all here to generate content and have fun.
Yeah, the best part is the nag pilot shot at his own buddy and then left and came back in a stereo to watch the fight. My only disappointment was that I didn't get it streamed or recorded. That was sad.
That's always a bummer. Well, that's great. Um, so how large is your corporation?
The alliance total is, I think, a hair. I mean, the official numbers, never that you see on Zcode never really count. But I think we're solidly at a little over 120 actual real people who come and go. And as you indicated earlier, with summer winding down, people are starting to come back into the game. So I mean, at any given time now, you're going to see 20 plus people on comms, even on a Wednesday night. So during the weekdays, it's pretty good. And we are pretty much all over the globe. We have a couple of people in the Australian time zone. They're busy with school at the moment. We've got people who barely speak any English and who have to type all their communications. Really good time zone coverage. And I think the thing that stands out to me most about the folks in our alliance is how, deeply committed they are to helping one another. If you have questions, you just ask and people will give you all kinds of ideas. Some of the ideas may be crazier than other ones, but there's a deep commitment to helping people learn the skills that they need to have fun in wormholes and to have fun in Eve in general.
Sounds like a pretty simple but very solid corp mindset to have. So, where do you see your corporation going in the future? I mean, I know, I'm going to ask the question that I'm sure you're used to being asked living in a C4. Do you see your corporation growing and moving out to another wormhole, or do you think you're going to be in a C4 for quite a while?
Why don't you answer that question?
Oh my god. All right, so it's likely that we would eventually move, but we've got a veritable city going in our hole, so we're pretty well stuck where we're at. We get really great content. We have great connections all the time. So we had 2 really good C5s and a C6 Wolf Rayet today. So I mean, we're great for content any way we look at it. So we're pretty much going to stay on the C4, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I just the amount of work it took to get our structures launched was just intense, and it's a really good whole. I think beyond that, I mean, I think that what we've seen certainly recently is that nullsec is an end game. It's a vicious, horrible place to live, and based on interpersonal rivalries that baseliners and mainline members know nothing about, they could lose all of their shit overnight and be completely fucked. And I think that if we can encourage more people to come into wormhole space and get the sort of same effective experience as nullsec without all the bullshit, I think that's really what we're looking to do, is to grow wormhole space in general, get more content.
Well, great to hear. That's actually a more verbose answer than I think we got last week when I asked some of the other C4 corps we had. I don't know where Lee went. He left. Okay. Well, I guess we're not going to get to hear from Lee to tell us about Stranger Danger. They are a little busy right now. Ongoing developing story of current events. Stranger Danger is currently being evicted by Beyond the Last Horizon, the main Russian corporation of hull control. I asked them if they wanted to come on and join us, and the Beyond the Last Horizons basically said no comments. So I guess we'll try to get the scoop on that in the next episode. So I guess if we don't have Lee, we will just roll right into the next section. Jacob, if you're here, do you want to talk about moving? Joining us tonight for this section, we have Jacob Matthew Jansen and M. Sully from Of Sound Mind, and hopefully joined momentarily by Red John Gilead Ayrton from the Glory Holers to talk about a change of scenery and moving out of their C4. So
yeah, we just moved from our C4 to C5 space, and we really love it. It was a long time coming, especially for myself. I really pushed it for kind of a long time, and I'm just so happy and excited to get my corp into high class space and experience that with all of them. Rolling in capitals is awesome. Throwing capitals around is a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to having big fights and participating in the C5 community.
So what was it that would you would say prompted you? Where was it that your corporation decided it's time to move to a C5?
So I think Jacob decided in last November without telling anyone. Has
That's
been sort of working on it since then.
So it
That's
took.
correct.
When was that decision made?
So I made it about last November that I wanted my corp to move to C5 space, and at the time, general consensus among everyone, directors, line members, was that we're happy in C4 space. We don't want to give up dual statics. Logistics is going to be too hard in C5 space. It was very much we want to stay in C4, and so I spent the last year kind of trying to change that.
All right,
And so now.
Go
ahead. Yeah,
From
so that changed over time, and yeah.
From an operational perspective, the sort of plan was announced to directors and staff in July or so. We worked on raising money and preparing a logistical plan and announced it to the Alliance when we started on anchoring structures right at the end of August.
So it took you guys about almost a year, 10-ish months from the moment you decided that we want to move out and to actually doing it. And is that correct?
Well, it took a year since I wanted to move out. That doesn't mean that we wanted to move out. So a more accurate moving time frame would be when we announced to directors, which, Sully, when you said that was, and I forgot.
It was July. It was a little bit before the Alliance tournament.
So that's a more accurate timeline of how long it took us from July to September.
Because there was a big corp discussion in like February or March where the consensus seemed to be most people wanted to stay in a C4. And then, I don't know, over the couple months after that, people's opinions sort of gradually shifted. And a big part of it was I think it became pretty clear that in C4 space we had become, big fish in a small pond.
And we were looking for
move to a bigger pond.
Yeah, we were looking for new content for our members, different things, using capitals, just being able to experience a different side of wormhole space. We felt like we had grown out of C4 space. We had experienced what C4 had to offer, and it was time for something new. And that new for us is going to be a C5. Well, is a C5.
Oh, great. Question from Stream Chat. If you have to pick one corporation, who are you most looking forward to getting to fight more often now that you live in a C5?
Oh, personally, for me, I just want to fight the big guys. I just want to fight HK and Laserhawks, and I know it'll be tough for us. And I don't think that we have ever beaten them, but I'm just really looking forward to throwing down with them as often as I can get to, and learning from that. I love to FC, and so going against someone who I know is decidedly better than us right at this point in time, I think I have a lot to learn from them, and I'm really excited to being able to bring triage and have the big fights. So me personally, that's what it is. And then continued fights. I love fighting TD Sin. I love fighting Shekel, which we did often in our C4. So
it'll be easier to follow in Brigade's footsteps and go dunk some Shekel Moroses if you guys have a static 5. It's a lot easier to find them.
You guys, TD Sin, have been one of my favorite people to fight the last few months because I feel like every time we fight, it could go either way.
Yeah,
I think we've both had some big losses to the other in the last few months.
I think that's I agree, and I think that's fantastic. I mean, I just want to harp. Jacob's mindset is something that I love. I think if like we need more people. Uh, Regjon just PM'd me and goes, "I'm FCing and killing people. Might be a couple minutes late." I mean, I guess if that's the reason to be late for a podcast, that's a good one.
Excuse.
So we're just gonna drag out our part and just keep talking. That's fine. If we had more people with that mindset, I think Wormhole Space would be a livelier place. Because sadly, I think some corporations come to the conclusion that the gap in between them and some of the other top tier groups is insurmountable, and they just give up. And it's a real shame because I mean we just lost another big Wormhole Corp to that kind of mindset, and when you decide that you look at Hard Knocks, you look at Laserhawks, they are both at the top of their game. They're both fantastic. I'm in the same boat with you. I don't think I'm not sure we've ever beaten Hard Knocks in an actual throwing down fully, and it's been ages since we beat Laserhawks in one of those. But if you let that stop you from trying, you're never going to either. I mean, I look forward to throwing down with you guys. I look forward to throwing down with a lot of the other groups. All the memeing about rolling aside. When we have the ability to throw down a solid fleet and just get out there, it's great. I mean,
yeah, I think you guys did a real big one the other day with HK, right?
Yeah. I was our triage pilot. I think it was last Saturday, or might have been the week before that. I can't actually remember. But I mean, it was just like you go into it knowing that it's going to be rough. It's rough, but the only way you're ever going to learn the ways and how to get better and all of those different things is just you go, you fight, you figure out what you can do better, you tweak them, and you just try again later. It's easy to mistake that advice and that mindset as suicide or just throwing and pissing money away, but I don't think that that's the right way to look at it. I can see how you think that that's how it looks like, because I mean we didn't kill anything except for Saber. And for better or for worse, a lot of your high end game Wormhole fights end that way, with it being a complete landslide in one way or the other, because logistics and faxes don't necessarily help in that, and it's just very easy for one fleet to just start cracking. But I mean, it was solid. I was catching people, they were catching people. We never quite broke any of theirs, but I'd like to imagine that at least their triage was sweating a little bit, because I know a couple of them did get kind of close, but we didn't quite push them over the edge that we needed. But I love the mindset that you just described there, Jacob, and I think that I'm sure I'm one of many people that are excited to see another PvP Corp moving into 5.5, because all of C5 space wins when we have another playmate, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah, the fact that we not want to fight against them mostly just means that once we finally do, it's going to feel real fucking good.
He means, do you mean not win?
No, once we win, we haven't beaten them in the past, but once we do, it's going to feel really fucking good.
Right, and that's the part that makes it so great. We've lost so many times, and but I just want to keep trying, and I'm really looking forward to the day that comes. I tell my core mates all the time, this sucks losing to them. I'm not gonna lie, you eat some big ISK bills, but one day it'll fucking happen, and it'll be a good time. So I look forward to every chance I get.
I wasn't around for this because I was AFK at the time, but there are people in Sound who still reminisce about the first time Sound beat ISO 5, so...
So, just out of curiosity, does the ability to use capitals more play in at all for your decision to move up?
I think that probably 99% of the decision.
Okay, so that's the biggest. Is that the biggest reason then? Is that a larger factor for your decision to move up than just having the living in a 5? Because I guess and to some degree, if you're in a 5-5 now, you're twice as likely to at some point connect. Kind of. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty statistics. Someone will probably
Because
prove
we
me
had a
wrong
5
here, but
static, so we always had a 5 in the
right,
chain
but
before.
no one with
So
a
I don't know how it ends up
5-5.
working out.
Nobody with a 5-5 could roll into you. So now at least the possibility is on both ends of the fight that you could in theory roll into each other. So
But they could still roll into our static, so I don't know how the math works out.
yeah, it's higher. That's I think the only thing that really matters there. But so yeah, because that's one of the biggest things I usually see people floating towards C4 Corps. But as we heard last week, a couple of them said that the capital combat, I don't know if it didn't interest them or maybe their pilots just weren't at the level to be flying all those capitals. It did not. It was not a main factor for them. So
Right. So that interest, I think, builds over time, and it's in the beginning when we moved in the C4, obviously we weren't super interested about using capitals because we're moving to a place that you can't use capitals. So I think that as you experience, wormhole space, and as we lived in our C4, it was we were itching for the next bit, the next step, and what you're saying about rolling and other people rolling into you, that's all part of it. And in my mind, that's still the capital business, because now we can roll with capitals and we can rage roll more often, faster, easier, with fewer pilots, and find the other groups. I just anytime I see a big group in the chain, that's what makes me happy. That's what I want to see. And so being able to roll with a capital, I feel we'll get that more often. And then also using capitals in fights. I'm so excited to be doing that. So I think 99% of it was being able to use capitals, both in rolling and in combat.
sure.
We basically never once fielded caps in our C4 because we felt a little guilty about bringing them out when people couldn't reciprocate. So it's going to be an exciting learning process.
Definitely. So, what do you foresee the future of your corporation looking like? I mean, do you see yourself changing much now that you live in a C5?
I don't think so. For memes aside, right? The thing that makes sound is our culture, and kind of who we are, how we treat each other. I gave it the name that we have, business casual comms. We try to be respectful with each other as much as possible, and that's the kind of community that we built, and I think that will follow us and has followed us anywhere throughout EVE. From nullsec to wormhole space, now to high class wormhole space. The culture has always been our main part and what has really driven us. So I don't really see the corp changing, because we always have that bit, that driving factor behind us is how we treat each other and how we respect each other. So I don't really see the corp changing based on where we live. It just opens up a different kind of content that we're excited to have, but I don't think the dynamic of the corp will change.
Do you foresee it being easier to recruit people now that you're in a 5 instead of a C4?
I don't really think so. I think it's probably the same. I do think, though, that as you grow, it becomes easier to recruit. So, it might be easier to recruit in the future. Ain't that the truth? Yeah, it might be easier to recruit in the future because we have grown and we have gotten bigger. And when we first moved to Wormhole Space, we had bled a lot of old members, and so over time it gets easier because it's kind of like a snowball effect thing. So, but I don't really think being in a C5 changes that.
All right. Well, how'd your fight go, Reg?
Hasn't happened yet. I might have to leave in the middle of this, so hopefully my guys are a little bit slow forming up for this.
So if it's not OPSEC, who are you forming up to fight with?
It looks like hull control. We'll see.
Oh, okay.
There's nothing really hot OPSEC right now.
Okay. So, Reg, joining us from the Glory Holers, we've got Red John Gilead Ayrton. So, do you want to tell us a bit about your group?
Yeah, sure. Apologies. Can I give you 1 second for a phone call?
Wow. All right. So I guess I'll just interlude here. We've got a developing story that I mentioned earlier. The eviction of Stranger Danger continues to move on, but the latest development is several different wormhole groups. I want to say it might actually be what Red John is alluding to, but it's also definitely includes Pos Party and Shekel Squad have counterattacked Beyond the Last Horizon in their home system. And
I'm back.
Beyond the Last Horizon has pulled out at least some of their forces from Stranger Danger's system to and retreated. Is that who you're forming up to fight, Red John?
That's what it looks like. We'll see how it goes. How much there's hold control. We just got an entrance, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, sorry about that. I have a family event happening at the same time, and my nephew fell off his bicycle. So these family emergencies prop up at awkward times.
I get it, totally fine. Well, cool. So I guess if you want to jump back in, so your corporation just moved also to a 5.5, right, from a C4.
That is correct. I'm horrible with dates. I think we did it around March, April. I think is when we made the big jump. We announced it a little earlier.
Wow.
Unfortunately,
I don't know how I missed that for so long. Every time I think we'd found you, I just kept thinking you were still in a C4 somewhere.
Yeah, I think we even fought you from the 5 a couple times.
You probably have, and there was a C4 in the chain that I just always assumed you guys were in, but that's good old TDSyn Intel network. So
you were one of the first bigger groups we ever fought in low class, actually, when we moved to a C4. I remember because you had a light missile Orthus.
Yeah, that sounds like something I would. So, tell me about your corporation's motivations. What was it that led to you guys deciding it was time to move up from a C4 to a C5? Was there a moment or in something that happened that made you decide it was really time to make that decision?
There was actually. It was kind of rather sudden, and I'd like to say like it came at this momentous peak of activity where we were like, yes, let's go do this. But it didn't really. It came like right before we went into a really big slump. So we started in C2s, we moved to C4s. We were hardcore, just kind of balls to the wall, fight everything all the time. We didn't really do Diplo. We hardly ever bat phoned. We hated the content, group things that people did all the time. So we kind of did our own thing, and not a lot of people had heard of us, but we just kind of clawed a reputation. And we reached a point where we weren't really having fun in C4 space. Like, there wasn't a lot of challenge. We were being bat phoned by a lot of low-class groups all the time for stuff that they kind of should have been able to handle themselves. And the only other two groups, like, we reached the point where we were accidentally blobbing Pos Party at least a couple times, and the only other two groups...
Accidentally with air quotes, right?
Well, no, I can actually honestly say we accidentally blobbed a lot of people. Like, I'd get 30 dudes in fleet and not even realize it, because it just seemed to happen. We didn't blob them that bad. We had like 4 or 5 more dudes a couple times. But like, it just reached a point where...
So, I'm hearing a similar thing. So you started to feel like you guys were kind of big fish in the little pond, which is, I think, a sentiment that Sound also just started shared, that the same-ish reasons for them was they started to feel like they were the biggest dog around, and they really needed to jump in and start fighting the other big dogs. Is that resonant?
It was that, and that's what started it. We had a lot of friends move to C5 space until it was active, and I was always die-hard C4. But like, the only groups that could like toe-to-toe fight us were Sound Mind and Mass Collapse at the time. Mass Collapse was EU time zone, so we never fought, and Sound Mind was 3 a.m. time zone with 80 dudes, so we never fought. I don't know how you guys do that, but more power to you guys.
Lol.
But
a lot of West Coast people.
What really kicked it in the ass was, at one point I got myself a barrel hole in a 5, and I started to learn what 5 chains were like. And we took a really huge hit to activity. Like, we went from 30 dudes whenever I wanted to 2 people in TeamSpeak for weeks at a time. It was rough. Like, there was points where we seriously had to sit down and consider, hey, what are we doing? Should we merge? What are we going to do? And it was during one of these low points. We had just shed most of our EU time zone. We had a big alliance meeting, and I realized that if I was going to rebuild this, it would be easy to do in a C5. And I basically just sat down and told everyone, hey, I'd rather be 5 guys in a C5 laughing our ass off and dropping caps on people and not giving a shit about anything than just have to deal with these C4 chains and, you know, try to rebuild here because I didn't have the energy anymore. And we made the jump. It took us like 2 months to move because we were so inactive and burnt out. Like, we'd haul a ship, go play League for 4 hours, haul a ship, go play League.
I can definitely appreciate that. It's fortunately TD Sin hasn't had to move for over 2 years now, but moving is just such a pain in the butt.
Yeah, you've been here longer than almost anybody, I think, and just I've seen how many holes you guys gone through. I don't know how you guys did that. Like, this is it for us. 5-5 dream.
So if you'll feel like sharing, did you guys so you guys probably had both of you groups had citadels up when you decided to pack up and move, right?
Yes.
We had 36 citadels in our home.
All right, so I'll ask you first, Red. How much stuff fell out of your main citadel when you packed up from all the people that just never moved their own stuff? If you'll share that number.
When we unanchor it, I'll find out.
You haven't moved out yet? Like you've moved into your. Oh, that's bad.
We moved all of our PI alts back over.
All right, well here you go. All right, so we just announced to the world that the Glory Hole C4 is just one giant loot pinata nobody's watching. So we'll follow up with how that went in the next episode.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know when someone hits it.
All right, so Sound. How was taking down 36 citadels? Was that an enjoyable experience?
You know, it was actually a lot less bad than it could have been. Sort of the way you do any big thing is you start doing it, then you keep doing it until it's done. We took them down. They came offline over a period of, I think, 10 days, staggered over it, and honestly, that was like more than it needed to be. We could have done it in like 7. We took down 10 Astrohuses a day for 3 days, and then 1 Fortizar a day. I don't know if we want to say the exact number, Jacob, but this was evicting ourselves was the most profitable eviction we've ever done by like almost a factor of 3.
No, we can. I just don't know how much it was.
I think like 120 billion. We have not done all that profitable of evictions, though.
Yeah, it's definitely more than you probably think it is. I've heard several stories from a lot of people whenever they talk about moving or taking their citadels down, just how much stuff falls out, which I guess is one of the things that makes Wormhole space interesting is you actually get all that stuff in theory. So,
we have a different model than people. You know, most people live in Astro houses. It's why we have so many. And people were really, really, really on the ball about moving out. So really props to my corp. People were did an A+ job moving all their shit out and doing it in time and, you know, when we needed them to. So
we really did not give them much time at all.
Right. And we had some awesome individuals in corp who were there every day moving things out for other people, and so, you know, I think that's why, you know, that was lower than I know some other groups who have unanchored their citadels. They've had several times what we had drop, but I think that goes to the dedication of my corp to moving their shit out.
So, how do your corporations handle keep managing all of the different assets? And I guess Sound just answered the question. How do you guys have everyone keep their stuff? Is everything piled into one place in the glory holders? Do you have people setting up private citadels?
We don't have much private citadels. I got a couple people. Well, my mill director still lives out of an Astor house, I think, just because it's named after him. Because he was the first one to anchor. We have always had, like, part of our issue with recruitment is, like, we absolutely refuse to fly with someone if we don't, like, 100% get along with them as people. Like, we have to really like someone to get it in, and just don't get me wrong, this is not the best way to recruit. We're assholes, and we're picky, and we're, like, a dysfunctional...
I wouldn't say any of those are
family.
negative qualities, though. You know, so, picky isn't always bad, especially in EU.
No, it isn't. Like, I don't think it's bad. It just makes, like, we're never gonna get huge fast. That's I don't know how we ended up feeling 30 guys. It just happened one day, and we had these diehard EUs who always stayed up late, so it was great. But we've always had a hard time recruiting, and most people who stayed with us, like, tend to stick permanently. We've had my EU director's left us 4 times, and he's never made it longer than 48 hours out of court before he comes back. Like, Mass Claps actually told him not to come back again, not to after them again after he left and tried to join them so many times. So we've always just shared things in general hangars if we actually needed to share them. We just sent things to each other. I have a couple directors who I'm pretty sure I still have like 5 of their ships. We've always just kind of had a group pool. We have a shared assets hangar that's only directors can access, and then we have a big general assets hangar we dump stuff in all the time. We're a little more organic. We're not really super organized. It's a mixed blessing, but you know, the best and worst of both worlds, I guess.
For sure. I think an item I'll avoid digging too much any deeper really into, because I think a good topic of one of these is probably going to be corp management. But I think citadels are way better than posses, but somehow not better enough that I think I would describe the asset management and, you know, trying to just run and manage a corp with them as enjoyable.
Yeah.
Spoken like a true wormholer, Exooki. Spoken like a true wormholer.
I mean, I don't know how many of you guys remember the days of having 50 plus posses, but it's definitely a step up from that, but I'm not sure it was a very big step.
Yeah, I think only a true wormholer like yourself would be nostalgic about the pos days, but yeah, there are definitely things that can be improved about the Citadel life.
So, I think we're probably gonna meander towards a close here, but Red, would you? Sound said that the ability to use. Oh, he has us muted. I guess that probably means they're shooting things. All right. Well, I guess so. We'll wait for him for another quick minute. Anything else that you guys would like to shout out? Questions? Let's see. Anything from Twitch chat? Questions? Anybody? Anybody got burning desires to hear of Sound Mind or myself answer your wormhole questions? I keep forgetting what the delay is set to, so I can't tell if it's no, there's nothing, or they just haven't actually heard the question yet.
Sorry, I'm back.
Oh, alright. Alright, so if you're listening to the stream and you've got questions, we're going to wrap up this topic, and I'll have a couple minutes for some Q&A. Red, Of Sound Mind said that one of the biggest reasons they wanted to move out of their 4 and up into C5 space was flying capitals. Is that also something that was of major interest for the glory holers?
Mixed. Every now and like a couple of us wanted to. What attracted us more was actually the ease of logistics. And the fact that we could roll our static really, really easily if we got bored with it. So it was kind of a mix of, we felt like we got more connections from C5, like lots of null secs if we wanted really casual content, which I felt would make it easier to rebuild. And freighter-capable holes meant we could just move freighters in, and we could roll our static for freighter-capable holes when we wanted to do logistics, which made logistics easier. So it was just like, hey, you know, if I'm going to rebuild this and make this work again, I think C5 space is going to be easier to do it with. It was kind of a weird
Definitely.
realization for us.
Of course, logistic-wise, I'm sure you've encountered it. Sometimes you're just as likely to get the C5 superhighway that goes nowhere useful. But I suppose closing that off and trying again might be a little bit easier than you had back in C4 space. How often did you find the C4 superhighway of just C4s chaining to each other endlessly?
At least twice a day. If we were scanning a lot, we rolled lots of holes. The C4 highway does exist. It's cool sometimes. You can get a lot of content on it. And back in the heyday when lots of people were in C4s and COP was around, like you could find lots of fights just like running down the 4 highway. But I kind of think those days are behind us a little.
So there were 2 questions in the chat for sound, which were, does Guillaume Renard play, and are we going to miss C4s? Guillaume Renard does still play. He was the FC for the insertion into our new home, actually. And I think we're going to miss being able to roll 1 static for logistics and 1 for content, but other than that, probably not that much.
Well, great. Anybody last minute here for burning questions? Otherwise, I think we're going to sign off for the night in a minute here. I want to thank all the listeners. Definitely you guys for coming on. Rosen Brigade, who's not here anymore, but I hope they're listening. Really appreciate you guys coming on to come chat and tell us about yourselves. We're a little shorter, sitting only about a little under an hour for this episode, so we'll see how that goes, since I know last episode I got a lot of this episode was a little too long. And for anybody that's listening, whether you're on live right now or you're listening to the recording later, if you're interested in contributing, coming on and chatting, feel free to drop me a line. This isn't terribly hard to put together, honestly. The hardest part is trying to figure out what I want to talk about and then finding the people that want to come on and talk about it with me. But that being said, I want to get as many people on here to shout them out, to give them a spotlight, and keep showing that Wormhole space is very far from empty. So thanks everybody for another night. Red, Sully, Jacob, thank you very much for coming on to chat with us. And everybody have a good night of hunting and blowing things up.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Ezuki.
Bye-bye.